Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show. And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Welcome back to the Jeff Crilley Show. It seems like there's another major security breach every single day. And what does your company need to know to protect itself? My next guest is James Roskopf. He is with INSURICA. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, tell me about what companies need to know about cybersecurity these days, because it seems like we get protection for everything except for what we probably need it most.
Could you have asked a more broad-based question?
I believe in starting things with a wide open question. Go ahead.
All right. So I sell cyber liability security, but the insurance policy is really the backstop to everything else that you do in your business. You really have to have a well-rounded security system that keeps up with all the latest software updates, really keeps your entire network in check, controls the use of BYOD. These days employees use their personal phones and company phones to do all kinds of personal work that's going right through your network. So the insurance is really the backstop to everything else that you do.
Do companies need to do more education or ongoing education for their employees?
That is probably the key component, is really keeping employees educated and up to date on what's going on. A lot of what's happening these days in cyber claims is social engineering losses. And by that I mean employees click on a clever email, and next thing you know, the company has wired $250,000 to Nigeria.
Wow.
So,
Right. And these days, the ransomware, I mean, can explain that. Hospitals are getting hit by this a lot.
Yeah, you've seen several stories of big hospital chains have been hit by ransomware. And what that is, companies hack into or the hackers break into your computer system and they lock it up. You turn on the screen in the morning and there's this pirate that says, "Give me money." Wow. And I'll give you access back to your system.
And in some cases, I saw an article about a year ago where the FBI was saying, just pay it. It's probably cheaper than, trying to get law enforcement involved. And especially if you're saving lives in a hospital, you really don't have a lot of time to talk about stuff.
That's a tough decision, because are you encouraging the bad guys to continue doing that? Is there any guarantee that they're going to leave you alone after you've paid them the first time, or are they just going to come back the second time because you caved in so early?
So when you get cybersecurity insurance, what does that cover?
There's two major parts to cybersecurity, and I'm going to get a little bit into the weeds, but there's first-party claims and third-party claims. Third party is when your customers have been harmed. So you're a retailer, information has been stolen, customers start suing you because of their own damages. First-party coverage protects you from things like federal fines and penalties, lawsuits against your company. So first party is for your own good. Third party is for everything that you have to do for your injured customers.
So in other words, if you're a business right now that accepts credit cards, you could be sued for a security breach. Is that right?
Certainly. And all the big hacks that you've seen, like at Target and Home Depot, every one of those companies was PCI compliant, which everybody thinks that makes you safe, but that's just a minimum level of security that you have to have. And even though those companies use third-party services to process the credit cards, you are the company where the breach occurred, and you're the one that's on the hook for any damages.
Do most general liability policies include language about cybersecurity?
There in the past was some limited coverage. Most insurance companies have endorsed their policies to delete any type of cybersecurity coverage in a general liability policy.
Wow, that's scary stuff. My guest right now, James Roskopf, he is with INSURICA. It has privately owned brokerages firms across America. They got 27 offices throughout the country, 400 employees. James, so I understand that the most common passwords these days are things like 12345 and password, and people really even 2016, they're still using passwords that are easily hacked.
It's pretty remarkable what people do. They'll try to use password. They'll try to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A lot of companies now have software that makes you use a more complex password. The other issue is a lot of people use the exact same password for every account that they have.
Right. Somebody told me one time that like a more clever password is the word Mississippi, but you have dollar signs instead of S's or something like that. How do you come up with a password that you can still remember?
Well, sadly, I have a paper list of passwords that I try to keep up with. Well, I've got it taped to the monitor next to my computer. But,
of course, where it's safe.
No, you just have to be clever. You have to change your passwords all the time. You need to, just come up with some kind of system that makes sense to you. Right. And the pits about the whole thing is there's software available that can probably figure out any password in 10 minutes, regardless of how complex it is. Passwords up to 26 characters can be deciphered in 10 minutes.
How recent is cybersecurity insurance? 10 years ago, did it even exist?
It's probably 10 or 12 years old. Initial policies were really quite basic. They've changed so fast now. Every carrier, every insurance company's policy is different. There's really no standardized forms. The coverages are getting a lot broader, adding things like business interruption coverage, for example. Even covering things like property damage. We're starting to see the beginning of claims at manufacturing plants.
Really?
So,
is it expensive? I mean, how much would a typical employer pay?
Premiums are still really low. There's 60 or 70 insurance companies all trying to gain market share. And so premiums are pretty nominal. For a small retailer, $1,000, $1,500 a year. Right. Now, if you're a healthcare provider, premiums go up dramatically because you have so much private health information on all your patients.
Do you believe that it's only going to get worse?
No. It's definitely going to get worse. There's so much easy money to be had. The ransomware claims, for example, on individuals, they'll pick up $500 overnight. Well, if you do 1,000 of those a month, right, you're making cash money.
It seems like we'd be able to stay one step ahead of the bad guys. Even, the FBI's been hacked, Secret Service has been hacked, Bank of America's been hacked. I mean, how come we can't stay one step ahead of the bad guys?
I think there's been such a rush of attacks, and there's always a certain level of inertia that everybody has to overcome. There's still a good number of companies that are just in total denial that things like this can happen to them. I really believe it's a big disaster, but now people are getting past that inertia step of, all right, let's do something. Let's get our security in place. Let's get an insurance policy in place. Let's start training our employees. So I wouldn't say that the worst is over, but I believe that more companies are certainly more committed to protecting themselves and their clients.
How do you feel about the so-called ethical hackers? I know that Ashley Madison, the cheating website, was hacked by people who wanted to expose cheaters for moral reasons. I mean, do you see any difference between an ethical hacker and just a criminal?
Your sins will find you out, is what my mother said.
Right.
So I don't know. Gosh, that's a trick question. Were they really ethical, or was that were they just mean people that wanted to spite somebody?
Right. So where do you see all of this headed? Just in 10 years, if you're opening up a business, is cybersecurity insurance just basic? I mean, that's right there up with fire insurance. I
think the cybersecurity coverage will be just a basic coverage that'll be included. We're seeing now more and more companies are requiring it of their subcontractors, as an example. Mm-hmm. I think security access to systems is going to change. You'll probably see some kind of biometric access to get into a computer system rather than password access. The whole social engineering issue has come on so fast where people get tricked into wiring money to remote locations. As employees get better educated and better training from their employers on how to avoid clicking on the first thing they see in the morning, I think we can overcome some of the social engineering. The social engineering is more just strictly education as opposed to some kind of security system in place.
And explain how this clickjacking works, because they'll kind of take the current story of the day, Muhammad Ali's death, and say, click here for never before seen pictures or something like that, or just something that causes you to want to click, or what do they do?
You know, these emails they're really very clever, and it looks like just a reasonable email, a reasonable link to a news story. And because the hackers are so clever, somehow you click on that, and the next thing you know, there's a virus in your email system.
Are you telling me that my Nigerian uncle did not leave me $40 million? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I'm telling you that he sent it to me. He didn't love you nearly as much as you thought he did.
Well, this has been a great segment. We'll have to have you back. So James Roskopf with INSURICA. The website is insurica.com. Can you spell it for us?
INSURICA.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the Jeff Crilley Show. Well, coming up next, she's like Magnum P.I. and Veronica Mars all rolled into one. Inside the life of a female private eye. That's next on the Jeff Crilley Show.